It's very clear today's not guilty verdict is tough for a lot of people to understand.
It certainly is. On your side, Chief Investigator Ron Regan joining us now. And Ron, what led to this ruling?
Well, the bottom line is this. There's a very, very high bar set by the U.S. Supreme Court. It essentially protects police officers who use deadly force because they feel their lives or the lives of others are in danger. Here's what Cleveland Marshall College of Law professor Jonathan Whitmer-Rich told me. What was the key legally for this not guilty verdict?
The legal key is his conclusion, ultimately, that based on what Officer Brelo knew at the time, what he had experienced, it was reasonable for him to conclude that there was an ongoing threat of death or serious bodily harm posed by the occupants of these vehicles, and therefore his decision to use deadly force, not only initially, but throughout the seconds that followed, was justified and reasonable.
And to be clear, there are many, many viewers who are going to wonder, despite all of those shots that were fired and despite jumping on top of the vehicle, that was not enough for a guilty verdict.
The judge made very clear that the fact that he jumped on the vehicle was perhaps was a bad police tactic. It wasn't a good idea. It didn't express good judgment. But that's not the fundamental question that the judge had to decide. The judge had to decide whether the decision to shoot, to use deadly force at that time, was justified. And the judge cited to some expert testimony that while it was a bad idea to get up on the cars, had the officer still been behind a car hiding, he would have been justified in using deadly force at that time. So that's the fundamental issue, and based on that testimony, he concluded that the use of force was justified, even if it wasn't appropriate to jump up on the cars.
Was there something else that struck you as significant in his ruling?
It was significant that he decided to really spell it out very carefully and at length, rather than simply delivering the verdict. He clearly wanted to give an explanation and demonstrate that he had very carefully gone through the evidence in the case.
Well, despite the not guilty verdict, the U.S. Justice Department tonight is telling me it will now review the testimony and the evidence in this case, and it will review all legal options. That leaves the door open for possible civil rights prosecution. So this case is going to continue.
All right, thank you, Ron.